Hey everyone, and welcome to Two Steps Forward, where sustainability meets business reality.
We could do a better job of not only kind of preaching to the converted and talking to people who think in terms of CO2e, which is like a very, very small percent of people, although I love us and I'm one of them, but really talking in a much more inclusive way about why are we doing this? What's at stake here?
I'm Joel McCower, and that was Google's Chief Sustainability Officer, Kate Brandt. More from her in a bit, but first I wanted to say hi to my esteemed co-host, Solitaire Townsend. Hey, Soli.
Hey, Joel. Good morning. It's great to connect with you.
It's great to connect with you, too. This is an adventure, episode 1 of this journey that we are on. I think maybe we owe folks, before we get into the substance here, a bit of explanation of, well, who we are, and for those who don't know one or both of us, and what the heck are we trying to do here? Do you want to start off?
I think that's a great idea, Joel. Now, of course, you and I have known each other for many years. We've been through the ups and downs and the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune in sustainability. So with your permission, Joel, I'm actually going to introduce you because you always do yourself down, and Joel is the OG of sustainability.
OG stands for old guy, right?
You are the original. You are the GOAT. You are the guy who I was reading about sustainability before I even knew that this was going to be my career. So Joel is an author. He is the founder of GreenBiz, now called Trellis. He is the man who can go on and do a cold opening at the GreenBiz conference and get everybody laughing and on their feet and raising their phones. But crucially, Joel is also somebody who knows everybody and has seen everything. So what I'm really looking forward to hearing from you, Joel, is the hard questions that we need to be asking right now in sustainability, but also a little bit of sense of, what can we learn from what we've done before? This is not our first rodeo for either of us. How can we bring the insights, the knowledge, the experience, and the stories from sustainability all around the world and over the last decades to help us in this moment right now?
Well, back at you, Soli. I mean, let me first of all just say that I love podcasting. I love audio in general. I always have. And I used to do a podcast for almost 8 years called GreenBiz 350. Some of you may remember that. I stopped in mid-2023 when I needed to kind of take a break from weekly deadlines. But I miss doing it. So late last year, late in 2024, when I decided I wanted to start up again, I wanted a co-host who was smart, clever, insightful, wise, provocative, optimistic, and kind of witty as well. And there was only one name that came up for me, my friend Solitaire Townsend, co-founder and chief solutionist at Futerra, a self-described change agency, as well as an author, speaker, provocateur, raconteur, and more. So just before Thanksgiving last year in 2024, I fired off an email, subject line, crazy idea. It said, hey, Soli, what do you think? And to my utter delight, you said yes. And so I'm just so excited to be in conversation with someone who is, again, so wise and insightful, but also really understands what it takes to get people thinking about and inspired and hopefully acting on sustainability, whether it's a big corporation, some of the largest companies in the world that you and Futerra have worked with, or just being on stage or in a small private meeting with a dozen people where I've seen you just really bring people together. So anyway, I can sing your praises for the next 45 minutes, but let's not do that. Let's just sort of get into what Two Steps Forward is all about.
Absolutely. And Joel, one of the learnings is if Joel ever sends you an email that says crazy idea, open it. Open that email. I promise you it's going to be worth it.
It's going to be my new subject line going forward, I guess, now that you've said that. But here we are, episode 1, and we're in this crazy time, this unprecedented time. I think we've all used the word unprecedented an unprecedented number of times. But this moment, this constellation of forces, this disruptive technologies, this political authoritarianism, all this stuff is colliding with worsening sustainability conditions, from climate and biodiversity crises to social inequity, immigration, and other things that generally heaped under the moniker of sustainability. So what I want to do here with you, Soli, and I know you're on board too, is focus on the role of the private sector in this moment, what they're doing, what they're not doing, how they should be, what they should be doing, what they should be doing better, and all the rest.
Absolutely. All those corporate sustainability folks who are literally sitting in the nexus of this moment. Many of them in post for many years, many of them really new and trying to work out, what do we do next? How do we take those 2 steps forward?
So, Soli, one of the things I want to ask you about, you write this weekly missive on Substack that I just love. And one of the pieces you wrote some weeks ago is that creative people are more optimistic about the future. And I just found that really compelling. What's interesting about that is, first of all, my gut tells me you're right. First of all, why is that true? And what does it mean to be a creative person? And is that just something that only the, so-called creators or influencers can claim, or can anybody be a creative person in this context?
This was such fascinating research, Joel. So it was done by a great partner of Futerra called BE Works, who are based out of Canada. And they did this comparison of people who score highly for creative traits, inventiveness, imagination, ability to imagine solutions. And then they also scored people on how optimistic they were about the future. And they found this extraordinarily strong correlation between the higher you score on creative traits, the higher you score on optimism. And what's really important is that they weren't interviewing a bunch of sort of artists or musicians. They were interviewing people across all walks of life, business people, teachers, folks in the private and the public sector, as well as people in the creative sector. Because you can score highly on creative traits, whatever role that you're in. By which I don't just mean marketing, I also mean in finance and accountancy. You can score highly on creative traits if you're someone who can imagine and conjure up solutions and pathways and find ways out of challenges and questions and problems. And that's a mindset, that ability to be a creative thinker that we so need right now, because the creative thinkers are seeing pathways out of our problems, whereas the non-creative thinkers are just seeing blocks.
Yeah, I'm not sure I fully on board with this, because think about this person. You mentioned someone in accounting or finance who is really into the numbers and understands that if you get the numbers right, you can at least create the conditions in which you can then make improvements and set goals and targets and timetables and things like that. And that makes them optimistic. That makes them excited and feeling like they're part of the solution. Where is this creative fit into all that? It doesn't feel like most of us would consider a creative person.
So I think that's a beautiful question, because actually I hang out with a lot of accountants. I've done work with the what was the Prince of Wales Accounting for Sustainability, which is now the Accounting for Sustainability Group, which is a whole load of CFOs and accountants, and indeed Futerra's own CFO, Karen, is part of it. And they are incredibly creative people, because what they will tell you is that the numbers are just the input. What you do with them, how you review them, what questions you ask of those numbers is where the creativity comes in. So it's not as if there was sort of some ultimate AI producing all of this information. We only get information because we decide to ask for it. And the accountants have this huge opportunity. And when you think about the fact that almost all of how business operates today was invented by accountants in the Victorian age, who started to say, maybe we should start actually writing some of these numbers down. Maybe we should track what's coming in and what's going out. Maybe we should ask some questions. So actually, accountants are brilliant question askers. They are fantastic at being able to create the question that will generate the data that helps to answer it. So I think that's really getting to what we mean by creativity, which is the ability to see beyond what's right in front of you, the ability to ask questions, to imagine new outcomes. Sometimes that is on a very tiny anything where you're just noodling all the way down, trying to really find what the answer is. Maybe an even better word than creative is curious, because that's actually what's the heart of creativity, is curiosity, is wanting to understand why, wanting to see more, wanting to see beyond what you're being told, and really, really get to the bottom of what's happening. So if you are a curious person, chances are you're a creative one.
So what do you recommend to somebody who says, I want to be more optimistic, I want to feel like I'm more creative, I want to be more curious, which itself is asking that is a curious question. Is there something that people might do to feel more creative and therefore more optimistic?
So I've got a great answer for you, Joel. Be more Joel. Be more like Joel. Because what Joel does, and what Joel has done his whole career, is ask questions. Ask questions of people he respects. Ask questions of people who are challengers of the sustainability agenda. Ask questions of leaders. Ask questions of on-the-ground community leaders. So if you are sitting in a dark space right now, if you're worried about what's happening next, if you feel like you're bashing your head against a wall, ask more questions. And maybe ask questions of people you haven't asked them before. Who can you go and ask questions of within your organization who might have answers that you hadn't heard?
And I'll just add one piece to that, which is don't be afraid to ask the dumb questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions that you feel maybe you should know the answer to. I mean, I've gotten better at this, saying, Soli, I know I should know the answer to this question, but help me understand this. And I think being a little brave, a little brazen, maybe even a little in your face from time to time, and just asking the question that you genuinely want to know the answer to, but also maybe you want the other person to be thinking about the answer too. It's a two-way street, and both of those things can get you on the road to that creative sense and hopefully more optimism.
I think that's brilliant. Too often when people try to think about strategies or solutions, when they try to think about new products or new ways out of what we're facing, they start with a blank sheet of paper and then they feel like there isn't any answers because they can't come up with any. So just because you can't come up with any answers on your own doesn't mean that there aren't any answers. Go out and ask questions. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing on this podcast. We're going to get some incredible people through the door and we're going to ask them what they're doing around this, how they're facing this moment, how they're selling sustainability internally and externally, how they're getting breakthrough. And hopefully those answers will be able to push us forward and help us be more creative.
Well, I can't think of a better way to segue over to our first guest. If you were to do a Google search for the top sustainability professionals, the top women in sustainability, or almost any other search that names or ranks corporate sustainability leaders, you'll find our guest today not just on the list, but usually at the top. Kate Brandt is Chief Sustainability Officer at Google, which she joined nearly 10 years ago from her previous job as the U.S. federal government's first ever Chief Sustainability Officer under President Barack Obama. Kate now leads sustainability across Google's worldwide operations, products, and supply chains. Kate Brandt, welcome to Two Steps Forward.
So thrilled to be with you both. Thank you for having me.
Kate, it's brilliant to have you here. And thank you so very much for getting up on what is quite early morning, San Francisco time. I'm in late afternoon here in London. And wow, are we on a roller coaster? And have we been on a roller coaster in sustainability for a while now? I'd love to just hear kind of like your take on the moment we're in. Like, how are you feeling? How are you feeling about what might happen next? How are you feeling about the progress of sustainability? Is it all going away, or are we going to take two steps forward?
Yes. Well, absolutely the right place to start this conversation. And I would say, I think we're facing certainly some crosswinds, but I remain really optimistic. I feel that we have made a tremendous amount of progress as a community and really unlocking, of course, so much transparency, a better understanding of measuring our footprints, of how to actually drive towards much deeper efficiencies. And also, we've made so much progress on a technology front. I've been so privileged to sit inside of a technology company and to work on this issue for nearly a decade. And look at how far we've come. Look at the advances we've made in energy. We now have advanced nuclear, advanced geothermal, massive scaling of wind and solar. Costs have come down dramatically. And then equally, I've gotten to spend a lot of my time over the last many years thinking about the role of digital technology as a solution. How do we harness the power of AI to drive towards decarbonization of grids, to make ourselves more resilient in the face of wildfire and flooding, and again, to unlock information, to do better modeling, to give people more helpful information as they're trying to make choices in their daily lives. So I remain positive, I remain very focused, and I think we need to keep going.
We do need to keep going, but I'm not sure that we've been going very fast. Certainly not at the scale, scope, and speed that we all know needs to happen to address the significant climate, biodiversity, even social equity challenges that we have in the world. At GreenBiz 25 this year, I used the term aggressively incremental, which I think describes a lot of what even the leaders are at best doing. So I'm wondering, is this, you talk about AI as one tool that stands to transform how sustainability professionals and companies that they serve meet this moment. Is this really a techno fix situation?
So I'm with you, Joel. I'm both positive and very impatient by nature. And, we've been talking about this decade of the 2020s as the decisive decade. It's 2025. It's halftime. We're not on track. So I am deeply impatient to do more. And what I am excited about is, you may have seen this piece of research that we put out with BCG about 18 months ago now that was examining exactly this question you've asked of what is the role of AI. And what I will tell you that research pointed to is it is not a solution in and of itself, but rather it's an accelerant. It's an opportunity to drive progress more quickly in exactly the way that I know we all would like to see. And what that study postulated was there's the potential for AI to lead to an additional 5 to 10% of emissions reductions by 2030 if we can really harness it in its most powerful ways. And I'll give you one example that gives me a lot of hope. We talk a lot about hard to abate sectors. We know that aviation is very challenging. It's long lead times to scale and get advanced biofuels to be cost competitive, or it's very long lead times to get alternative engines. We still need to do all of that work, but that's not necessarily really going to come in its scale this decade. But what might? Contrails abatement. So what we also know from the IPCC is that about 1% of all global warming is coming from contrails, from the radiative forcing of those little clouds that we're seeing coming out of airplanes. So we've done this work with American Airlines and Breakthrough Energy to use AI to better understand why is that actually happening. It's a combination of factors. It's elevation, it's time of day, it's temperature. And then we did 70 test flights with American, and with very small incremental AI recommended changes, really just in altitude, they were able to reduce contrails by more than half. So if you just think about it, one potential AI-enabled solution could reduce 0.5% of all global emissions if scaled. So that's the kind of thing that's getting me excited, is how can we find these creative step change solutions that we can implement now on the road to these longer term investments too.
Well, let me follow up with that if I may, Kate.
Yeah.
That sounds like a great solution. But I'm wondering whether this is a situation that we're in as humanity, as a planet, where it's simply a matter of doing the things we're already doing more efficiently or more effectively with the help of things like AI, or do we need to transform what we do and how we do it? I'm just always wondering, and people, I love technology. I'm a tech guy. But I also know that this is not always about technology fixes. So how do you think about that?
I do think it's both. I'm a huge fan of continuing to look at step change solutions like fusion, for example, right? We've actually done quite a bit of work at Google using AI to support fusion science to make it more effective, to make the shots more effective. So absolutely, we should keep doing that. We should keep working towards these bigger step change solutions. And back to the comment I was making a moment ago, I also think it's really important that we drive on what we can do right now. So I think it's about toggling between both. We have focused our strategy more on what's implementable in this decade for the reasons I've shared. And again, I think there too, there's still so much need. So another area I feel like we talk about a lot is the grid, is the need to modernize the grid. We're now in a moment where there's actually load growth on grids for the first time in a couple of decades. So again, we're thinking about how do we not only be very mindful and responsible in how we're managing the load we're bringing to the grid, but also how can AI help us manage the grid more effectively and efficiently? And so we have a sister organization within Alphabet called X, our Moonshot Factory. And they have a moonshot for the grid called Tapestry. And what they're doing is they're looking at how can we better model grids? How can we understand what would it look like if we were to pull off a coal plant? What would be the implications of extreme weather on wind? How do we do better planning? How do we accelerate the infrastructure that we're going to need both in the near term and in the longer term? So as I say, I think we need to think both long term and near term, but I'm really focused on this decade and getting a lot more done.
What I love about this conversation so far is we're talking about societal level solutions. How can we bring solutions not just to Google's own operational, getting it done at home, but actually how can you contribute to global net zero? Because one of the things which is just becoming so obvious is this is a team sport. We make net zero together or we don't make it at all. And as each company sort of noodles away on its own three scopes, what are we going to do about the rest of it? Particularly, for example, grid decarbonisation, which essentially is the deciding factor on whether any of us hit our targets or not. So you and I have had this conversation a lot about whether companies should be looking just within their own house or whether they need to be looking to how they contribute to societal global net zero. Is this something that you feel that kind of Google has got some contributions to make? Is this something that you think that we should all be looking at? Or should we kind of fix ourselves up at home before we go trying to help anybody else?
I think we absolutely have to do both. And Soli, I'm so grateful that you've been such a wonderful thought partner to me and our team on this very topic for many years now. And as we're spending time with you in 2019, even really thinking about, okay, what are those ambitions we want to set for ourselves in this decisive decade? I think I felt very strongly, you felt very strongly, we need to do both because, of course, we do need to continue to drive towards greater efficiency in our own operations. And for a large energy user like Google, we also have a lot of scale. We can really partner with utilities. We can also be early adopters of these advanced clean technologies like advanced geothermal. So yes, we need to do that. And we set a very bold goal for ourselves for 2030 around 24/7 carbon-free energy and net zero. Additionally, we said we need to also look at what is our opportunity in our case as an information and an innovation company to enable others. And so we said, what would be an audacious aspiration to put out there? A gigaton. So we said, look, we want to enable our partners, our users, to avoid a gigaton of emissions by 2030 through the support of our products and solutions. That's the equivalent of the emissions of Japan. That's a very aspirational goal. But the reason we put it out there was it pushes us to innovate. We like to say at Google, we like hard problems. This is a great hard problem to solve. And to your point, Soli, this is where I hope, and I'm beginning to see the whole conversation moving to, is how do companies build this into their core business strategy because we're seeing this demand. We have cloud customers coming to us saying, help us solve these challenges, help us solve deforestation, help us solve greater supply chain efficiency. And we have users coming to us saying, how do I buy an electric vehicle? What's the difference in cost? Or what is this heat pump thing? And what, incentives might be available to me? So for us as a business to really achieve our core mission to provide value, we need to be bringing solutions forward. So we think we absolutely need to do both.
Which brings us back to AI. AI superpowers are around synthesizing and analyzing and optimizing and predicting vast amounts of information that people can't. You mentioned the grid. The grid is arguably the largest machine humanity has ever built, and the complexity of that and bringing all these renewable and other technologies on and optimizing it in real time is a big deal. I'm wondering, so much of the conversation around AI from a sustainability perspective has been either on the environmental piece around the amount of energy being used, or on the social piece around things like deepfakes. I imagine you have a more nuanced view of that in terms of the potential for AI to be transformative beyond. You mentioned already the contrails from airplanes. Where else are you seeing the potential for significant impacts, the kind that we need in this moment?
Absolutely. The way that I think about this, the way that we think about this at Google is we need to deploy AI in a way that is both bold and responsible. So we have the opportunity to utilize this incredible technology to address the world's greatest challenges, environmental challenges, better educational outcomes, healthcare innovation. So that is what it is to be bold. And then on the responsible, and we need to manage AI in all of its forms and facets as responsibly as possible. And in my remit, that's all about the environmental footprint. And so that's why we've set these very ambitious goals for ourselves around clean energy, around reducing our footprint. It's also why we keep driving on how do we train these models as efficiently as possible. We've published research that shows how you can reduce emissions 1,000x, energy by 100x, and also how do we keep driving on the infrastructure to make the infrastructure more efficient. With each generation of chips, we're seeing, step changes in efficiency, a 67% increase in efficiency just between our last two AI chips. So we need to really keep driving on that responsibility. At the same time, we need to unlock the bold. We need to unlock the opportunity. So in addition to things like decarbonizing the hard to abate sector of aviation, other places we're seeing big opportunity. We talked about grid modeling, also as it relates to energy, utilizing the power of AI to make the siting of solar much more effective. So we have two tools in this realm. We have a solar API that's looking at the solar potential of rooftops, making it much easier for solar developers to do off-site siting and to reduce the friction to get more solar deployed more quickly. And then similarly, we have lots of solar developers that are using Google Earth to site large-scale solar to, again, make that process more efficient, more effective, to get more clean electrons online more rapidly. Additionally, we've done a lot of looking at cities, that subnational level being such a great way to drive change, to innovate. And a place that we found, another one of these sort of unlocks from an optimization perspective, is around traffic light sequencing. So we've been working with city traffic engineers in over a dozen cities around the world to say, how do we use AI to help us better understand the reduction of starting and stopping events, which, by the way, has massive implications for air quality. Air quality is 69 times worse at a standstill intersection than on the open road. So we've been able to reduce starting and stopping events by 30% and to reduce emissions by 10%. And now we're looking to really bring this solution at a much greater scale to cities around the world. So those are the kinds of opportunities that we're seeing that we need to keep driving on, and we need to continue to innovate.
I love hearing those examples. They always fill me with so much hope, because it's tiny millions of little calculations that no human would ever be able to do, being able to bring about those massive changes. There is, however, one thing that humans still have to do, and particularly the people that I work with and all my wonderful clients, which is convince they're bored around all of this. So at the moment, I'm doing a lot of chatting to boards myself. I'm helping a lot of our clients chat to boards. You're such a leader in this, Kate. What are you saying to the leadership that you have in Google to help them understand what's happening in this moment and what we need to do? What would you advise all the wonderful folks who are listening, lots of whom are having to convince people within their businesses around what is going to happen next? How do we stay the course? The EU's changed some of its rules. We've got other rules changing elsewhere. Kind of what's the one piece of advice that people should be giving their boards right now?
I feel extremely grateful that, this is a company where sustainability has really been a value to us, since our founding over 25 years ago. And it is very core to our culture. And it's very core, as we were speaking about a little bit earlier, to our mission as an information and an innovation company. And so I think the conversation that I come back to with our leadership, which is very much a two-way dialogue, by the way, is what are we being asked to do by our customers, by our users? As I was referencing, we have many cloud customers that are coming to us asking for not only tell me the carbon footprint of using your services, and in fact our ads customers as well. We just recently launched a calculator for our ads customers. We've had this capability for our cloud customers for many years, but also tell me how I can be more efficient. How can I optimize my supply chain? How can I deploy more carbon-free energy? So we continue to feel that pull. And again, from our users as well, when you look at Google search results, we've seen people continue coming to Google asking questions about, how do I recycle something near me? Tell me more about electric vehicles. What about rooftop solar? So part of it is being able to provide the best and most helpful information to our customers and users. Additionally, Sola, you referenced the regulatory landscape. Although, evolving, as a global company, we need to take a global view, and we are continuing to see push from the European Union, push from a growing number of markets in the Asia Pacific region to do more disclosure, to do more climate risk assessment. So we also need to continue to meet that moment, again, not only for ourselves, but to help provide tools and solutions for other companies that are facing these challenges. And I'm really bullish on AI. It's so helpful to make information more useful. So, we, for example, last year when we published our annual environmental report, put a chat feature on it so you can actually query the report. A completely different experience than opening a PDF and keyword searching and poking around. And it's amazing. Our next report will come out with an even better version of this that I can't share much more about yet. But it's just amazing how much more helpful disclosure and information can be when we can put AI interfaces on top of it. So that's a lot of the conversation that we're having of what is the demand we're feeling, how do we meet the moment ourselves and for our customers, as they are also facing more regulation. That's very much where we're having the conversation right now.
But at the same time that there's this push for disclosure, there's also this push back on communications, on talking about this stuff, on being seen as a leader. You, Google, and you, Kate, have been leaders in this for a while. How are you thinking about communications in this moment?
I've been thinking about this a lot, and I think a real moment of reflection that I have had is, I think as a whole space, and I will say, I sort of say this to myself and to many of us in this space, we could do a better job of not only kind of preaching to the converted and talking to people who think in terms of CO2e, which is a very, very small percent of people, although I love us and I'm one of them, but really talking in a much more inclusive way about why are we doing this? What's at stake here? And that's a bigger discussion about things like I was just mentioning. When we're looking at cities and traffic lights, we can make air quality better so my neighbor's kid with asthma can be more healthy. Or, what's at stake for the food on our plates? What's going to happen to salmon and grains as the climate changes? What does that mean for us? What is this future that our children are inheriting? What's happening with those rivers and lakes that we love to fish in? Why is there trash in them? So I think that my reflection is we need to expand how we're talking about this. We need to really lean into why is this meaningful, not just for those of us who already really care about the planet and the environment, but for literally every single human being. So that's what I want to work on. I want to work on leaning more into those co-benefits, talking about health outcomes, talking about also saving money. As we all know, the great thing about energy efficiency is it saves you money. One of our most popular sustainability features is eco-friendly routing in Google Maps, because we'll show you a more fuel-efficient route. We can save you money and send you in a route that's more efficient from an environmental perspective. So that's what I'm really focused on.
So what I'm hearing is that maybe your advice, and I'm going to put words in your mouth here, and you tell me whether I am doing this correctly, is companies maybe talking less about what they're doing as a company and more about what the benefits are to you, the citizen, the parent, the family member, what I think you've in the past called co-benefits of doing this work. Is that what you're talking about?
Exactly. Indeed. And I think that's how this becomes a much broader conversation that everyone sees themselves as a part of, rather than, oh, I'm a sustainability professional, so I want to talk to you about this.
100%. Can I just say, though, that I love this. And as you know, I'm very obsessed with the functional and the emotional and the social benefits.
Totally.
But we haven't done enough research on it yet. We haven't actually identified a whole lot of benefits that might be sitting there that no one's even taken a look at. Is changing our diet's going to help us get a better night's sleep rather than just reduce methane? Is traveling differently going to mean that my IQ goes up if I'm actually being more active? We've got so much opportunity there to really, really dig out, as you've put so eloquently, how like all this sustainability stuff, you should want to do it anyway.
Completely. And that's for me, that is the unlock, right? Is this vision of a world in balance, of abundance, is what are all of the benefits for us, for our families, and for the planet. And I completely agree with you, Soli. I think more research into that is absolutely merited. So I would love to talk with you more about that. I think that's a really excellent point you're making.
I know that we're coming towards time, but I can see Joel is just fired up by this.
Well, all of these things we're talking about company behavior, about family behavior, about the behavior of everyone in a supply chain, for example, really comes down to the one enemy that we all face, change. Change is hard. We don't like it. We like the idea of change. We actually don't like changing. And that seems to be the barriers, whether it's internal to a company or to a customer, B2B or B2C. How do you think about that in terms of what needs to be communicated? Because you're talking about big changes, and we're all talking about, we want to see the big changes that we all need to be undertaking. How do you think about change in the world that you inhabit within Google? Let's just keep it to that in terms of how you try to get your team members to do something differently.
I will say in the context of Google, like the great thing is that I love about us culturally as a company, sort of I said this thing, but it's really true. Like we like hard problems, and also we're a place of constant change, and we're sitting in the midst of this very rapidly changing landscape of digital technology, especially AI. So in our best moments, we all get tired and need to go meditate and take a hike. But in our best moments, I think we're really energized by the opportunity to drive change in ways that's positive, that enables us to have this vision of this more abundant future where we're enabling progress, we're enabling positive change. So I think that's largely very energizing for us. And then I think also at an individual level, kind of back to what you just said, Soli, for instance, after many years of largely being kind of a climatarian, of mostly, eating a very plant-forward diet, I just in the last 6 months, I was like, I'm only just going to eat a little bit of fish, and otherwise I'm really going to be a vegetarian. And I feel so much better. So although there was a more climate, related to my work reason I went down that path, now that I've done it, I couldn't possibly go back because it's just better. I just feel better. It's better for me. It's cheaper, right? So it comes back to, I think at the individual level, it's like, how do we hone in on how these things make our lives better and more enriched and more fulfilling? And then in our work lives, I think it's like, let's get excited about the change. Let's get excited about the opportunity. And I have that talk with my team all the time, because that's when we do our best work. And it's not always going to work out, by the way. It's this model of startups, right? Let's try things. Let's fail fast. Let's keep going. Let's share what we've learned. Let's work together. Let's partner. Let's drive the change in a way that we're going to get up every day and be excited to go do it.
I love that philosophy, because sometimes in sustainability, I think we put ourselves forward as if we've got all the structures sorted. We know how to do this. We've got the reporting. We've got all the maths. It's like, hey, that's not true at all. This is a big old journey, and we need experimentation, and we need entrepreneurship. And as driving all of that, we need some joy around this. Oh, what a wonderful conversation to have in what can otherwise be considered to be a difficult moment. This is exactly the kind of energy we need to bring.
I couldn't agree more. And how joyful to do it together, right? I mean, both of you are just some of my dearest and most favorite people in this space, so inspirational to me. And this is what it's all about. Let's work together. That's when we're at our best, the synergy that comes from partnership, from co-creating. That's what I'm just very excited about right now.
Kate Brandt, thanks so much.
Thank you both so much, and appreciate you and all your leadership. It's so great to be with you.
Well, Soli, I think that went pretty well. Shall we do another episode?
Yeah, I think we've probably proven that people will answer our questions.
Well, in that case, let's do it again. Join us next time where we'll talk with Reverend Lennox Yearwood, CEO of the Hip Hop Caucus, on the role of culture in promoting sustainability. Thanks to you, Soli, and to everyone out there for listening. Be sure to subscribe to Two Steps Forward wherever you get your podcasts, and to the Trellis Briefing, the daily newsletter from Trellis Group. Just go to trellis.net to sign up. And also to Soli's regular musings on Substack. And finally, please follow Soli and me on LinkedIn. That's it for this episode. Until next time, I'm Joel McCower. Thanks so much for tuning in.